Hi there, guys, and welcome to another segment of Rant Radio coming to you live tonight. And this week's topic is going to be discussing advertising and its impact on culture. And we were supposed to have a guest speaker tonight with us, our friend Charlie. However, there is a personal issue going on tonight with him that he has to be attending to. So he will not be on the show with us, but hopefully we can get him on an episode coming up later in the month. So I will be doing the show tonight by myself. And one of the first things I wanted to start with is actually a quote from JFK. And this quote was from a speech that he gave in front of the American Publishers Association on April 27th in 1961. And this speech was in regards to the media, but I think that this quote kind of sets up the ideas that have been lost, not only in the media, but in advertising. And it is my belief that advertising and the media go hand in hand together now, and that they help to either prop each other up, cover each other's mistakes, or disregard information that is vital to the public and keeping these businesses in business, and the media helps with that. So I'm going to read you guys the quote just to start out, and I think next week's segment may deal with the media as well. It's one of my themes that I'm debating. So guys, feel free to let me know what you think about that and any info you want to provide on that subject. So here's JFK. That is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, and to lead, and to mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. This means greater coverage and analysis of international news, for it is no longer far away and foreign, but close at hand and local. It means greater attention to improve the understanding of the news as well as to promote transmission. If it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent. And of course we know that because of Citizens United, the press is not now the only business that is covered under the First Amendment, and of course a lot of us have gripes with that. But what does this mean? You know, the idea that the news and advertising is meant to inform and to keep us free and independent thinkers. Well, that isn't just the case anymore. And maybe it was years ago, and I will go into the history a little bit of advertising in America, but it is certainly not the case anymore. The media and advertising are in bed with each other. And this bad romance that they have is shaping the way that we live and the way we function in our society. And basically we're living in an era where feeling good about yourself may be just a shopping mall trip away. We're losing our real identity, and we're finding it in products and inanimate objects. So it's this emotional attachment and this awful burden that we have, where we depend on advertising to tell us what to do, how to think, what to say, what to feel, and of course what to buy. And I feel like America is acting more like a bunch of lemmings who would be more willing to, for instance, drive off the fiscal cliff if the billboard that they pass on the highway was able to convince them so. We have become so dependent on what ads tell us to think and what ads tell us to believe. And I don't see a society that at any point rather questioning their authorities or questioning what they see on TV. They take it at face value and they buy products blindly. And it has led to lots of detrimental health effects in this country and the way we value each other and the way we all live together. And because it's not really about well-being for advertisers, they don't really care if you're feeling good about yourself All they care about is whether you feel good about buying whatever it is that they're trying to sell you. So basically they make big bucks off of keeping us hooked. We're like a bunch of people that are entranced. Every time an ad comes on, it's like people are mesmerized. And there's lots of subliminal little ways that advertisers sneak in their messages when you might not even be thinking. And a lot of the times, their repetitive ads are there to make you stop thinking, to make you unconsciously buy things that sometimes you don't need, and to not even think twice when you're just walking down an aisle. Sometimes you're just recognizing a logo, and you don't care what's in the product. A lot of people don't take the time to read labels, and a lot of labels are very misinformative. So ads are more designed to get things stuck in your brain, to lock things in your subconscious, and to make you feel better because you chose that product, not because you made an informed decision. It's just branding, and it's the way the industry works. And honestly, a lot of people feel that it's an evil way of manipulating and deceiving people who are not taken as informed consumers. They're taken as a bunch of schmucks, a bunch of fools, people that are easily conned and easily manipulated. And that's just not fair. And it's not done that way everywhere. And I'm going to show a comparison between America and European advertising in a little while. But first I want to get started in how did all this madness start? How did we turn into this culture where one of our most favorite rituals is going on a shopping binge before Christmas? When did all of the craziness begin? And the history of advertising goes back into ancient times. There are proof of ads as early as Babylonian or Egyptian days. But in America, it really kind of started in the early 18th century. So most of the original ads that people saw in the colonies, they were mostly just announcements of goods that were available. They were nothing fancy, and sometimes they came with some persuasive appeals to go along with dry descriptions. But it wasn't what you see today. And some of the original ads appeared in Benjamin Franklin's Pennsylvania Gazette. And the ads were set just alongside the editorial material, just on a small column, maybe on each side of the paper. But there weren't that many illustrations or headlines or fancy fonts back then. They were very simplified. And some of them were even ads describing slave sales. So there would be ads appearing for slaves that were literally on discount. Or there were ads enticing people to bring forth fugitive slaves or runaways, and that there was some kind of reward attached to them. And of course, everyone knows about the Wild West days when there were ads that would advertise the latest fugitive gunslinger that had gotten loose. But ads, in the most part, in the beginning, were very conservative, and they were focused on simply showing the product and what it did and where it was available. So in the early to mid-18th century, ads stayed pretty modest, never taking up more than a column on a page. And they kind of avoided putting them in magazine ads anywhere near the front cover. They tended to be in the back pages. So you could actually read what you wanted in the magazine before you had to start getting bombarded with any advertisements. So kind of the way it should stay, because you buy a magazine to read the content, not to be bombarded by a bunch of ads. But that's, of course, how it's taken over, because they've seen how successful it is. So at the end of the 1880s, as industry starts to improve in America, there is this big boom of mass production. So all of these products start getting made on a large scale, and suddenly these national brands start to pop up. And that is when the demand for advertising really starts, where suddenly a local advertiser that primarily had their market in a local newspaper, a few magazines, now they're becoming servants to these large national advertisers that want to compete for the entire country's business to sell these very simple products that can be distributed coast to coast. And so that's what really starts the boom, is the industry boom. And this happens in the auto industry. This happens in all kinds of products, whether it's toothpaste or furniture. Anything that you make on a large scale, suddenly you have a demand to advertise for it, to get your market out there. And that's when ads really started becoming more competitive and really vying for the buyer's attention. And that's where they had to start coming up with ways to put the ads out there, and where would a good place to advertise be. And so the industry started to grow. Now, basically, advertising volume, if you look at it from 1880 and then to 1920, so that's only a 40-year difference. It went from 200 million ads that were appearing in 1880 to 3 billion in 1920. So this is a huge, huge growth spurt that we see. And of course, the 1920s was a very prosperous age in America before the Depression hit. So everybody was living large and loving luxury. And that was what it was about, is people living beyond their means. And that's where you began to see these kinds of ads where they glamorized certain activities and glorified certain behaviors, such as smoking and going to the movies and buying jewelry and all of these products that have now become associated with the materialistic world that we all want to be a part of, because that's what it comes down to, is this idea of conformity. And that's what you start seeing after the 30s and 40s, is this continuing sense of making everyone conform, and you want to be cool and feel a part of something. So that's kind of what the advertising industry capitalizes on, and this very uniformed way of making everybody feel that they are a part of each other because they share these products together. It's all kind of silly to me. And of course, if you guys don't know, I actually majored in advertising in college, and it was there that I realized what a terrible industry it was, and I dropped out and pursued a music career instead. But it's really amazing, and I can tell you firsthand that what I learned in these tactics that they use, the modern day techniques of how they get people addicted to products and really hooked on certain messages, and we become these unconscious buyers. It's really disturbing, and it's having really detrimental effects on our culture, because our culture doesn't resolve our differences. Our culture doesn't come together around any rituals. We basically satisfy our needs by what we buy, and we don't really take into consideration the product's impact on the environment or the product's impact on ourselves. It is simply, we're trying to satisfy an insatiable need that is not being met by society itself. There is no culture to replace it. So the culture in America has become consumerism. And that's the issue, is that our culture in and of itself is simply buying things, or selling things, or trying to sell things. So you have a culture of marketers and copywriters, and we're losing the artists and the musicians in the mix, where they are all being forced to turn themselves into a commodity, because that seems to be the only way to make it and to appeal to the masses, because the masses have been brainwashed into feeling that that's how they have to consume, that it's only that way and there's no telling them anything else. But the advertising industry doesn't want to change. But there are some countries that are making some changes, and that's something I'm also going to discuss a little bit later with you guys. So basically, there's a really cool quote I found that I think kind of summed it up. There's actually two quotes. One is by historian Roland Marchand, and he said that in the beginning, basically, ads sought to adjust Americans to modern life, a life lived in a consumer society. So you see that there was this epiphany that they had in the advertising industry, where the modern world was going to be determined by the things that we bought and sold. And that's what our culture has become. And originally, the ads were much more homogenized. They appealed to everyone, and they were universal ads. But now what we're having is a segmentation of the market. And since the 60s and 50s, there has also been a little bit of a dividing nature, where ads are targeting certain groups, and they're making assumptions about who you are and what you like. And this is all falling into stereotypes and demographic reviews. And that's how they do it. They basically look at a market, and they see trends, and they market to you based on those trends. But some of these are flat out insulting. And a lot of the ads are racist, they're sexist, they're anti-gay, they're anti-environment, and they're anti your own well-being. They focus on you developing a selfish nature where you don't care about other people and you just want more and more and more. And it's the greed aspect that also factors into advertising, that advertisers encourage people being greedy. They encourage you buying more than you need, and they encourage you wanting more than you can afford to spend. And that's one of the issues, is that a lot of people feel compelled to live beyond their means. Even if they can't afford that fancy car, well, there's a credit card being advertised where they can get free financing, and they can pay zero down for a year. But the fact is, this just starts a very dangerous cycle of people feeling that they must validate themselves through products that are completely out of their means and out of their budgets. But that's the brainwashing for you, and that's why we're a nation full of debt. So I wanted to kind of touch upon this really cool chart that I found, which discusses the way advertisers use certain values. And there's a difference between extrinsic values and then there's intrinsic values. I have to get that right. Intrinsic. So extrinsic values, basically, they talk about conformity. So it's the idea of wanting to fit in with other people. And, of course, we experience this in high school. Everybody wants to fit in and feel like they're a part of a clique. Extrinsic values also deal with your image. You want to look a certain way, and you want to look attractive to other people. And that's how you feel that you're validated, through your body and your clothing. Also, financial success. Of course, ads definitely target our wanting to be successful, and that is always in the form of some kind of financial wealth or the acquiring of assets. And that's how it makes us successful relating to others. And they create a sense of competition simply in the way we view ourselves and each other. Also in the forms of achievement. Personal success through demonstrating competence according to social standards. So are you competent in the eyes of society? Ads also target that and try to make you feel that you are incompetent unless you buy this product or unless you are a part of this service. And these are ways that they manipulate our minds. And apparently, before these products came along, we must have just been a bunch of useless people that couldn't get validated any other way. But thank God this product came along, and suddenly I can feel good about myself and feel like I'm a part of society. And the last one is power. This is probably the most influential extrinsic value, in my opinion. It's the idea of social status and prestige, control or dominance over other people and resources. And of course, everybody tells us we live in a dog-eat-dog world, and that's exactly what they want us to keep thinking. So we keep eating away at each other, we keep putting each other down, and it's a cycle where we go home at night, and if we're miserable, we can just pop in that easy-bake oven, ready-made meal, sit in front of some garbage television, and forget about how much our lives actually suck, because advertisers don't want to tell you that your life is meaningless by buying all these products and getting addicted to these TV shows. They just want to sell you stuff and make some money. But where is the actual value in our life? Where is the actual sense of purpose? And that's what the intrinsic values are about. The intrinsic values deal with affiliation. It's to have a satisfying relationship with family and friends. Or the self-acceptance. It's a feeling that you're competent and autonomous on your own. The idea of having a community feeling, that you want to improve the world around you in the form of activism or socially creative projects. And then there's benevolence, preserving and enhancing the welfare of those with whom you have frequent contact. For instance, you see somebody on the street every day begging for change, or you have a neighbor who is suffering financially. It's that idea that we reach out to each other and we feel connected to each other and our neighbors. And then there's a sense of universalism, which is another value, is the understanding, appreciation, tolerance, and protection for the welfare of all people. So this is the thing. You read all of those values, and it sounds like that's what advertisers should be focusing on. We should feel good about the products we buy because the products are good for our country, they're good for our environment, they're good for us physically, emotionally, and psychologically. And there should be ads that promote the sense that we are together as a community. There should be that sense of camaraderie, that we do care about each other's welfare, and that we want to contribute, and that we want to have a voice. But the fact is, American advertising makes us feel stupid. It expects us to be stupid. It assumes that we are not capable of making decisions and caring about one another, so it just disregards the notion altogether. And instead, it focuses on selfish values that promote low self-esteem, that promote a low sense of the world around you, and honestly create pessimistic viewpoints. And this is not what we should be about. We should be a culture of love, of acceptance, and about wanting to promote that and becoming an improving country of people. not constantly resorting to the same techniques and the same tactics of divide and conquer, and I'm separated from you because of what you like and I don't, or the way you look versus the way I look. And these are the themes that are going to continue to play out unless we can influence the advertising industry. And luckily there are a few. Luckily we have places like Adbusters to turn to, which is a collective of former ad agents or people currently in the industry that are actually trying to find a little bit of repentance for what their sins have brought them to do in the advertising industry. And they get together and they make a mockery of the ad industry, and they point out its flaws, and they point out the way it tries to deceive and manipulate. And it's really great to have outlets like that to go to, because that's sometimes where you can get the most information and you can better gain awareness of these ads. And honestly, me personally, I can't even watch ads anymore because of how irritating it is, and because I read through the lines and I see what they're trying to do, I see how they try to manipulate, and honestly, I just have to turn them off. I lower the volume, or I simply don't watch TV. And if you start being aware of these little signs and these little subliminal things that they throw in there, and you start paying attention to the language they use, the tone they use, the kinds of models they select, the positioning of the product, and where it's located, is it in some tropical place, or is the atmosphere miserable? What kind of mood are they trying to send your way? And what kind of emotions in you are they playing with? These are the kinds of things that we need to recognize so we can be better consumers. Stop letting them insult your intelligence. You need to be more observant, and you need to just literally ignore them, because if they're trying to sell you something you don't need, don't watch. There's no reason to waste your time. So don't participate. And that's my advice on that. So basically, present day, one of the scariest statistics, I think, is that the average American is exposed to about 500 to 1,000 commercial messages a day. So that's a lot of messages. And all of this stuff is getting locked in your subconscious. All of these things get embedded in your brain and come out in different ways. They may not manifest themselves physically, but emotionally, we are shaping the way we value ourselves and each other and what we define as our values. And we're learning so much from these ads. But are we learning anything good? Are we actually being educated in any way? I don't think so. I think a lot of this is designed to dumb us down even more than they already think we are. And that, to me, is extremely disturbing. So what's the difference between American culture advertising and the European style? Well, American culture advertising seems to be more focused on classic reasoning. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of comparison. They tend to throw a lot of facts and statistics at you so that you can seem to be more of an informed consumer, but actually they're just feeding you all this information because they assume that you know absolutely nothing. There's also a hard sell technique. There's a sense of urgency that you have to buy this product now, that you can't live another day unless you get this product now. And it's always bigger is better, extreme it, supersize it, now, like the world is about to end. Well, it didn't end. So why are they so urgent to sell you these things? Europeans take a different approach. They kind of use a technique like emotional blackmailing. They rather appeal to your senses, to your ideas of lust, to longing, and that kind of emotion plays out in their ads. But they take a much more artistic approach. And on average, the agency directors, they start out as artists in Europe, whereas in America, they usually start out as copywriters. So you can see why Americans tend to be more obsessed with print and throwing a bunch of words in there, whereas in Europe, they focus on more of the layout and the elaborate beauty of the ad and the kind of emotions that can invoke from that. They're a little bit more reluctant to be in your face with advertising, and there's actually some places where ads are banned in Europe. And I'm going to talk about those statistics in a little bit when I discuss about how we can better improve our ads. So basically, what does American ads do? They distract us, they manipulate us, they make us much more dependent on things that we don't need, and they've created a culture of consuming for the sake of consuming, not because we actually need to. I don't understand why you can pass by the mall on any given day and it's packed. How can people possibly need to keep going back to the mall? What is there that is so pertinent? But it's just our culture. We're literally addicted to it. And the advertising world knows that consumerism is just our opiate. It's our addiction. We can't help it because we're not being given anything else of substance to latch on to. Our TV shows are garbage, so we become addicted to celebrities and what they're doing instead of caring about ourselves and our families and what our neighbors are doing. Why do we know more about celebrities and their lives than we do about our own friends? Why are we living in a fantasy world? And why does the advertising industry insist on keeping us there? It seems that they are more intent on creating a false world, on creating a world that they want us to exist in, where we simply live beyond our means, and we're constantly buying on credit, and we're constantly developing emotional attachments to inanimate objects instead of having emotional attachments to each other. And that is sick. And that has got to change because the system is not sustainable, and neither is the way the advertising world does business. And if they think that they can keep selling products this way, and people are just going to continue to buy and buy and buy when there's 10 different varieties of 20 different products, and every product has its own brand, it's just excess. It's unnecessary. We don't need 50 versions of toothpaste. We don't need 20 versions of detergent. Why can't they just make one product really well and it will sell itself? Because we need it, because it's important, not because it's been created in our culture to need it, not because it's been added to our society as a demand. That's the thing. A lot of this stuff is just excess. You know, if we could all learn to live more of a minimalist life and really appreciate the few things we have, instead of trying to clutter up our lives and act like hoarders, we might actually have more time and money to do things that we'd actually enjoy, things that would educate us, and things that would make us feel better about ourselves. So going forward, what are some things that Americans can do to help clean up the advertising industry? Well, we can vote to ban children advertising, and this has been done in Sweden. In Sweden, they've banned all of the advertising to children because the thing about kids is that they're the ones that often get the advertising first. They sit at home and they watch cartoons, and every time there's a break, there's another product that's looking to be sold to them. But they're not consumers with disposable income. They don't have jobs. So why are they marketing to kids? Well, they're hoping that those kids, even though they may not even understand the information they're receiving, will go to mommy and daddy and say, I have to have this. I have to have this. I don't even know what it is, but I've got to have it. And it's the nag technique. And a lot of industries use that technique until the parents finally cave in out of exhaustion and buy their kids whatever the hell they saw on the TV screen. And that's just not good, because we're basically exploiting the child, and we're forcing the parents into a situation where they have to either try to please the child, who doesn't even understand that they're being manipulated, or they deprive their child, and they're seen as a bad parent. So it's just creating another aspect of our culture where we have guilt parents and we have guilt kids. And the guilt complex needs to stop. So in Sweden, they're fighting against that. And then there's public space. Public space is another area that has been completely hijacked by advertisers. You cannot walk down the street without getting bombarded by something that either moves, talks to you, or is flashing lights inducing a seizure. And of course, Times Square is a perfect example of this. You literally can't look in any direction without seeing an ad bombarding you with information and a desperate need for some product that you probably don't really want. So basically, this is referred to as visual pollution, and that's exactly what it is. So people should have the freedom. We should be able to choose when we see advertising. And that's one of the things we need to advocate for, is demand that places like public parks and public streets and sidewalks be free of this ad. I shouldn't have to get on the public subways and be subjected to an ad that not only covers the entire outside of the train, but also covers the entire inside of the train. And suddenly I'm being transported into Tropicana land, or I'm being told that a seat next to me is reserved for someone in a good mood, and I'm on my way to Tropicanaville. It's all a bunch of crap. And I walk out feeling like I just entered the Twilight Zone. We need to put a stop to this. It's out of control. There is going to come a time where ads will have encroached every surface, every crack and crevice of our world. And why is that okay? Why is it all right for us to constantly wake up and be subjected to this? I should be allowed, as a consumer and as the one with the buying power, to control when I see advertising. If I'm going to buy something, then allow me the opportunity to go looking for the brand that is going to satisfy me. don't constantly feel like I am just a walking consumer, a little walking wallet, waiting to buy something. And thank goodness that ad came along on the stairwell to let me know about it while I'm on my way to work. So where else? Well, in Sao Paulo, they actually banned outdoor ads to try to alleviate this problem. And that was in 2007. And also Britain no longer has any billboards on their motorways. So there are some other places where they're acknowledging that this is excessive and that people don't want to actually have these ads in their faces and that it's really not helping to sell anything. So they're pulling back on their advertising exposure. And it's not really impacting their business too much. So maybe eventually the advertising world in the U.S. will take some cues. There's also another opportunity that we can actually capitalize on the advertising world's out-of-control nature, and that's taxing them. And that's taxing them based on what their product is about and whether it's good for the environment or good for people. If you sell a product that really doesn't do anything good or is actually a damage to society, maybe you get taxed more. If you offer a non-profit organization ad and you're looking to promote the well-being of people all over the world, you're trying to end starvation, save animals, save the planet, whatever it is, maybe you get a tax break and maybe you get more opportunities for airtime because you're actually promoting a positive message versus these ads that promote nasty products that are bad for you and promote obesity, or they're bad for the environment and pollute, or they're simply not good at all because they promote sexploitation, racism, or class divisions. So that's just another option where we could have more of an incentive for good companies to be able to get their products out there and bad companies to maybe think about their ways a little bit. But I think that's more of one of the far-fetched options. And although I wish that we could tax an industry based on its good merits, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But everybody's got a dream. And finally, it's the idea of ads being accountable for themselves. There's something that you never see when you watch an ad, and it's a logo of the agency that actually produced the ad. You have no idea where this ad is coming from, but there's a slew of creative directors and people behind the scenes that are meticulously putting these ads together, inserting their subliminal messages, and sending them out into the masses. Why are we not allowed to see their faces? Why don't they put a logo in the ad itself that lets us know where it's coming from? Because then, maybe if we have a problem with the ads, we can go ahead and attack them head on. We can send them letters, and maybe even occupiers can show up at their door. But they don't want us to know who they are. And I think it's because they don't want us to be able to hold them accountable, to be able to confront them when we have a problem with the way they do business and the way they manipulate and deceive people, the way they target children, the way they treat women like objects, and the way they continuously promote bad elements of our society that we have been trying to correct and eradicate for years. So that is my solution. That's my rant. And thank you guys so much for being a part of it. The advertising industry is complicated, it's elaborate, it's huge, and I absolutely loathe it. But unfortunately, we are subjected to it every day of our lives. So when you shop smart and don't fall for their gimmicks. Think long and hard about what you buy. And take a look at some of the European ads and see how they do it. Because they assume that you're a lot more intelligent than America does. So that's my rant, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we'll see you next week. And we will be ranting back on our Monday night schedule at 9 p.m. And Jack's going to go ahead and rattle off our links for you just in case you need to spread the word. Thank you guys so much for watching.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. That concludes another episode of Rant Radio. You could follow us on Twitter at JAK_NLAUREN. Again, that's at JAK_NLAUREN on Twitter for live updates. And when our bus tour will start, we'll be doing live updates and all that. And our WePay is WePay.com/donations/JNL_live_1, and that is the number 1. Thank you guys again so much for coming out. Global Rev, thanks for all your support. Occupy World News, everybody else that mirrors our channel, thank you.